Ooh, what up, though? It is fight week. UFC 296 going down this Saturday. And who better to talk about it with than the homie James Lynch? But before we get to that, we got to tell you about the people that are bringing you this episode, and that's our friends over at Potter's Tree Service. If you're in need of tree removal, tree trimming, chipping service, storm damage cleanup, walnut logging, lot clearing, all that, Asa Potter and Potter's Tree Service have got you together. But, I mean, I can tell you a whole lot better than I can show you. So as I get this all set up, we're going to check out what Potter's Tree Service can do for you. Make sure if you guys are in the need for any of those things that you are checking out Potter's Tree Service, check out all the links to all their stuff, which is in the description. In the meantime and in between time, enjoy the show. Drop.
This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Ross, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts and 3 Counts.
Cover! We got it from their world champion!
That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts and 3 Counts is the podcast, baby! It's the real deal, baby!
Knockouts and 3 Counts starts now.
Boom, boom. And just like that, we're back at it on a Tuesday. StreamYard's given technical difficulties, so you didn't get to see the beautiful Potter's Tree Service commercial, but we'll get that taken care of in the post. But, Mr. Lynch, man, it's been a minute. I appreciate the time, man. How you feeling on fight week?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys. Way too long, and that's all on me. Been busy guy, but happy to be back here talking to you about one of the best pay-per-views this year. I'm really happy about it.
You're not wrong, dude. This card is a sleeper when it comes to what's actually on this card. When you consider for what we have in the main event of the prelims with Emmett going in there as well, coming in late notice, then you've got your main event with Leon Edwards and Colby Covington, and that's not even talking about all the heat that everybody's been talking about with Ian Machado, Gary, and all that stuff, which we'll get to that in a minute as well. Corey J-Bone, how the fuck you doing on a Tuesday?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Existing. Dude. Trying to make it through this holiday season. Santa's been kicking my butt a little bit this year, as any parent could probably say with the way everything's going. But other than that, man, doing well. Just trying to prepare for Christmas, man.
I feel alive, dude, after this past weekend. Shoot, I'm alive and well. Fight week, the last year. It's fucking a great card. Let's go, man. I'm pumped.
You're not kidding. That's look, for anybody who doesn't know what J-Bone's talking about, we're talking about that's the first time I've ever been to a death match that was at a skate park. And not only just a death match, it was a no ring death match. And we had bands playing in and out in between that too. It may have been one of the most bizarre scenes I've ever been at for a wrestling show, but at the same time, simultaneously might have been one of the most fun times that I've ever had at a wrestling show just because of the utter shit show.
The band was taking damage, bro. The band was
dude, they were smoking each other with light tubes.
Yeah,
man.
The craziest scene of wild. So shout out to Chris.
It was wild. Awesome. But James, I've been keeping up on everything that you've had going on, and you've had quite the list headed into UFC 296. With all that said, I mean, how are you feeling about this card? How do you think that this card's going to stack up as far as 2023?
It's going to go down as one of the best, if not the best. Like you mentioned, even on the prelims, you've got Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell, which is just an amazing fight. You've got Dustin Jacoby, Alonzo Menefield. The prelims are a great card. And then the main card, there's so much intrigue here. You've got the two title fights. I was about to say one, but the flyweight title fight's completely flying under the radar. The rematch between Pantoja and Royval. You got Colby Covington on this card. You got Ian Machado, Gary. You've got so many exciting matchups here, not to mention Shavkat Rakhmonov, Stephen Thompson. Really excited that the UFC has kind of gone all out for the last pay-per-view of the year. Really, really stoked for this card.
Couldn't agree more. J-Bone, Corey, what do you think on this one, man? Where do you guys think this is going to end up ranking in the 2023 card list?
It's hard to say. Figure that out later at the end of the year awards. Because this could be the one, dude.
We only got 2 weeks till those, bro. So it's not a lot of time.
What I'm saying, I have to stay tuned for my pick on that. But this has all the makings to be card of the year, dude. I mean, like you said, the flyweight title fight is flying under the radar big time. That is a huge man. We talked about this earlier, Kyle. That one could steal the show. It could definitely be fight of the night. So stay tuned. We're gonna find out, man. Fireworks.
Yeah, you gotta love whenever a pay-per-view is so packed that, like you guys said, whenever you have a title fight kind of flying under the radar, that kind of speaks to the volume of this card, the fact that it's stacked to that level that people aren't even necessarily paying attention to. Your point, something that could be a ultimately entertaining, like great 125er title contest. So I don't know, man. Either way, I'm looking forward to it. But to your point, James, it's just, you gotta love when you see early prelims up. There's fights that fight fans like us actually care and have real aspire to watch.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest, and you guys are pro wrestling guys as well. Like, there's so many storylines going into this. This might, if Colby Covington doesn't win, what happens? To his career, right? This is probably the last chance he'll have at a title shot. You've got Tony Ferguson fighting Paddy Pimblett. Is this the end of the road for Tony? You've got like there's just so many things. Like, you were talking about card of the year. If Tony Ferguson and Colby Covington went on this card, like, this is going to be like, that alone would be such a huge feat on this card, because they're two fighters that have been counted out a lot in a lot of, Tony more so than Colby, but a lot of people don't want to see Colby win the title, but a lot of his fans do. So there's so many things that make this card interesting. And I think one of the themes we've seen this year is a lot of upsets. We had O'Malley over Sterling. We had Sean Strickland over Israel Adesanya. So this is the type of card, I think, that has the makings of that as well. Got a couple big favorites on this. I know we're going to get into some of the fights, but there's some intrigue here, especially with some of the names on this card.
Couldn't agree more. Well, let's start from, we don't have time to go through all the fights, but let's start with probably the one that's got the most intrigue before we head into the main card, and that's the one that we got at the main event of our prelims with Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. What do you think about this fight? Because I know Emmett took it on shorter notice. I don't know how long he had before this fight, but I know he's not coming in off a full camp. Bryce Mitchell's coming off.
That took it on short notice.
That was right.
It's the other way around.
I mixed myself up.
Chikaze was the one who was out. Bryce Mitchell stepped up. So
there you go. Caught myself up. Switch that. How are you feeling about Bryce Mitchell taking this one on short notice? Because he's coming in, man, that guy takes nothing but tough fights, dude. And he's coming off his win over Dan Ige. So, I mean, he's coming in with a lot of momentum. But a fight against a guy like Josh Emmett, you could be leaving with your lights sleeping.
Absolutely. Sorry to interrupt. I'm the guest here, but I guess I'll just get this going. I think it's kind of like it's kind of like a win-win here for Bryce. I think Bryce was coming off that really devastating loss to Ilia Topuria. Josh Emmett's coming off a loss to Ilia Topuria. Bryce then rebounded with a fight with Dan Ige. I think, to me, Bryce taking this on short notice, he's fighting a fighter in Emmett who's not the old Emmett. You mentioned him knocking people's lights out. We haven't seen that in a while from Emmett because of injuries and age. And the real question is Josh Emmett still a contender in this weight class? You look at the losing streak, you go, oh, maybe it's the end of the road, but he's losing to the best in the division. He lost to Yair Rodriguez and Ilia Topuria, fighters that are extremely talented and fighters that are, like Rodriguez just fought for the featherweight title. Now Topuria is going to fight for it. So you're talking about some of the top level competition in the weight class. With Bryce, I really like what he did in that Dan Ige fight. I thought that was a good rebound from a pretty devastating loss he had to Ilia Topuria. Youth is on the side of Bryce in this fight. Bryce is well-rounded. I've heard people say that Bryce is overrated and that he got exposed in that Topuria fight, but I think a lot of people are forgetting that he beat Edson Barboza decisively, and Edson Barboza is still kicking quite well at his age in the featherweight division as well too. So I think Bryce is going to go in there and look great. I just don't see Emmett having that knockout threat, and even if he did, I don't think Bryce is the type of fighter that has any sort of bad chin or any deficiencies. The wrestling will be interesting, but Bryce has certainly fought some wrestlers in his career as well too. I think Bryce is probably going to keep this on the feet, try and get this to the ground maybe a little bit, work some jiu-jitsu, but I think Bryce probably edges out a decision here. He's younger, he's faster. I think what it boils down to is I think Emmett is kind of at the stage right now where he's on a bit of a decline, and I think Bryce is in the prime of his career, so I got to go Bryce Mitchell here.
I'm with it. Corey, who you got?
I like the analysis on that one, but I think with Bryce Mitchell, to your point, the youth being on his side and stuff like that, they both kind of had an interesting fight against Topuria. I think Topuria's he's a character in this 145 division. We'll see how the fight with Volk plays out, but being the undefeated kind of fireball that's being thrown in the division at the moment, we'll see how, I guess, that loss plays out in time for both of these guys. But that being said, that was Bryce Mitchell's first professional pro loss, and he lost in the Ultimate Fighter back in the day. But other than that, I mean, he was on that streak as well. If I'm not mistaken, he was at like 8-fight win streak in the UFC or something before that fight, and he really did gain back a lot of momentum in that Ige fight. But I don't know if Josh Emmett has lost as much power as like you're saying. I feel like, yeah, age is ultimately going to catch up to him, especially being such a lean guy in the division. I feel like those guys always suffer more when it comes to the age and stuff like that. But that being said, I want to lean towards Bryce Mitchell because that's where my fandom leads. But I feel like Josh Emmett, he's going to be really hard to take down. His striking's very powerful, and I feel like that's kind of the one deficiency of Mitchell is he's not always able to land the best shots, and if he's not able to get the takedowns on people, he struggles from then on. That's what we've seen in the Topuria fight. Granted, he was sick and everything like that leading into that fight, and we don't know how much that played into that as well. But I don't know. I lean towards Bryce Mitchell, but I'm not putting money on this fight, put it that way.
Mm-hmm. This guy's playing chicken on his picks. J-Bone, who you got?
Come on. I'm taking Bryce Mitchell. I'm taking the prop, taking by decision, man. That's my final answer. Bryce Mitchell by decision.
I think the over is a good play. Honestly, the over the fight goes the distance, I think probably hits. I don't think we'll see a finish here. It's 3 rounds, right? That's the big thing.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think this fight ends in decision personally, because I think Bryce Mitchell coming off a performance like he did against Dan Ige, like you guys said, he had a tough fight against Topuria, but I feel like everybody's having a tough fight against Topuria right now. The guy's fighting for the title. So, I mean, for you to lose against the guy who's fighting for the championship right now, I mean, you really can't go much less than that. And if he does beat Volkanovski, well, then that loss looks a lot better now because you lost to the champion. So with that said, I think Bryce Mitchell wins. I kind of like the way you guys are saying with decision, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him try to submit somebody too. But I think it's going to be a tougher fight for him than people are thinking. But I'm going Bryce Mitchell on that one myself. All right. So with that said, now we're on to the main card. Before we get into this fight, James, I want to know your thoughts on everything that we're seeing with Ian Machado Gary. You know, there's been all the talk about how he's turned his comments off and all these things so that it protects his wife and his child, which I totally respect as a man, you know, but at the same time, with his wife putting out the video or the book with the WAG thing and all that stuff, do you think that that stuff's going to be such a deterrent or such a distraction to him that it's going to cost him here in a fight against a guy in Vicente Luque who, regardless of what his record looks like, which is still a good one, that guy is tough for anybody to beat, and that guy hits hard. So how do you like this fight?
So I'll answer the first part of your question. I think it is going to be a distraction. Is it going to cost him the fight? I don't know, but you have to think this has got to be bothering him. I mean, not even just with the stuff about his family and all that. And I think that stuff's a little obsessive, like the people kind of going after his family. But honestly, Gary brought this on himself, right? The Jeff Neal mugshot when he fought Jeff Neal never did anything to him. Neil Magny turning him into this child abuser when he made a bad analogy about his kid. Like, come on, man. And now he's turning off his comments. Like, how do you think, Neil Magny felt when people are going after him and Gary's painting him as this monster? So I think that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because like, it's one thing to go after like Colby. Like Colby's like controversial or whatever, right? So, Colby's brought stuff on himself, but you're talking about like Jeff Neal and Neil Magny, who are, two of the nicest guys. How about his opponent, Luque, used to train with them, posts this, big thing about him getting baptized, and Gary makes some smart comment about how, I'm going to be standing in front of you like Jesus. Like, I'm paraphrasing. That's like basically what he said. Like you're not winning people over doing that. You're not clever. Like McGregor at least was clever. You know what I mean? Like, he's not really doing that. So I think that stuff's a bit of a distraction, not to mention he's not training at Killcliff this camp, right? Because he can't, because Luque trains there. So those things will play a role. It's tough because Luque looked so bad against Jeff Neal. Like, Neal dominated him. It looked like, the old Jeff Neal that we saw, get a number of good wins prior to him getting sick. But then the fight after against RDA, he looked great. Like, he really did beat the brakes off RDA in that fight. And Luque looked like the old Luque in that fight. So if we get that Luque that we got in the last fight, it's going to be close. It's going to be really close. Because here's the thing with Ian Gary. He does get hit a bit. You watch the Keenan Song fight, got dropped in that fight. He's had fights where he's, had some deficiencies. And the Neil Magny performance in his last fight, it was a dominant win. Magny was injured early on in that fight and he couldn't finish him. And I know we talked about how Magny's dangerous, but Magny's not really like a late finisher in fights. So I think this fight, like the last one, will go the decision. I do see it hitting that. And I know that sounds crazy because we're talking about two knockout artists, but consider the fact that Luque's only been knocked out once in the UFC. Gary's never been finished. I could see this being like a 29-28 type battle. I think the odds are off. I'm taking Gary just because of the youth. I think he's going to be a little bit faster. But it would not shock me at all if Luque won this fight because, again, he's fighting a guy in Gary who does get hit a little bit. And it's, again, he doesn't have as much pressure. Gary's supposed to be this future Conor McGregor. Vicente Luque is just out there ready to have a fight. So I think a lot of that will play into the fight, but I see it being closer than the odds indicate. But I'll give Gary the decision here.
Yeah,
all right, Corey, what you got?
Those odds are wild. I agree with you. Those odds are absolutely wild. I forgot what I seen him earlier. It was like minus 350 or something for Ian Gary. And it's like, that is way closer of a matchup than what Vegas is seeing. Maybe they always
as we stand right now.
What was it, J-Bone? Sorry.
Oh, J-Bone froze. Did.
What'd you say it was, J-Bone?
Minus 345, I think he said.
Minus 345. All right. Well, either way.
Minus 345 at the moment.
Yeah. So either way. That's wild odds, man. Like I say, especially with everything going on in the background, to your point, I mean, it's definitely a distraction. We'll see how much. I think more of the issue is him we've seen him be successful at it to this point, but he's been fluctuating gyms. It seems like every fight he's going somewhere else, doing something else. And he doesn't seem to ever have his set group of like head coaches and stuff that really can help him build his game. He seems like he's always looking for that cannot talk today. He's always looking for that next best thing. And I don't know if him continuously looking around gyms is going to be the best bet. To your point with the Kill Cliff thing, I understand you can't train where your current opponent is going to be training, but it's a weird thing with all the Leon Edwards talk, and Brendan Allen came out and said some stuff about him as well with the training with him and stuff. It's just a lot. He's had a lot of stuff following him. I think the whole pretending to be Jesus thing, I'll be the one standing in front of you, I think that one significantly slipped under the radar of most fans because a lot of people aren't even really bringing that one up. But yeah, he's got a lot of distractions, but something about him tells me he's the undefeated younger guy that is going to go out there and get it done. But at the same time, man, this is his toughest test. And because the odds are as big as they are, if I'm laying money on the line, I'm going Vicente Luque. But I feel as though we may still see Ian Machado with a 0, but with the lines the way they are, man, that's some good money.
All right, who you got, J-Bone?
I'm taking Gary here, man. But I mean, back to you guys' point, this is stuff we don't need for him. This guy's riding a 13-fight win streak. You don't need the extra stuff that you're throwing with this fight. You don't need the bad publicity. Keep riding your wave of momentum, man. You could be the next superstar here. So ride that wave, go get your wins, rack them up, get to the title shot, man. I'm gonna take Ian Gary by decision. Like James said, this might not be a knockout fight. We could see a dog fight. But I'm going to take Gary by a close decision.
All right. So I like Ian Gary as well. But all I'm going to say is, since we're going to talk about Colby Covington here in a minute, something that Colby said really stuck out to me with this too. Here's the thing. You can want to be Conor McGregor or, whatever. A lot of people compare him to Conor just because the guy's Irish and all that stuff. And even with some of the stuff that he says. But here's the thing. If you're going to play the heel role for all of our pro wrestling fans and all those things, you got to know what comes with that. All right. So if you're going to play that heel card like Ian Machado Gary has, I don't blame you for wanting to protect your family, being your wife and your kid. But here's the thing. When you do that and you play that card and you put yourself out on Front Street as I'm the guy who is going to take these shots that might be these one-liners that are going to be what gets picked up in the news and all that, there's also another side that comes with that. And now you've got to be able to back that up. And if people don't like the stuff you're saying, you have to be ready for the heat that's coming with that. Because Colby said it, and I forgot, maybe it was Jimmy Smith who I was listening to earlier, another past guest of the show, that was talking about it, in all the shit that we've seen Conor do, I've never seen Conor turn off all his comments and all these things either. He's said a lot of dumb stuff, but he's also taken it on the chin, the same as, what Colby said. So for me, Ian Gary is going to have to look at himself and look at his wife and look at this whole situation after he gets out of this fight and have to look at, what type of look do I want to be put out there about me headed into this fight? Because you're going to have to decide. Either he's going to play the heel role and people are going to keep coming at you like they are, or you're going to play it somewhere in the middle of it, or you're going to just drop the shtick. But I do think that it's going to affect him a little bit in this fight because, you can hear him when he talks about this fight, that it's playing on his mind. I still have Ian Gary winning this fight. But to all three of your point, I think Vicente Luque is by far going to be his toughest test. And if he comes in there and isn't focused and isn't ready to go in there and fight a full 3 rounds, Vicente Luque might knock his head into next week. But as far as who I'm picking Ian Machado Gary on this one.
It's such a career defining fight. Win, lose, draw, no matter how it plays out, the way the fans are viewing him and stuff, it's just so career defining at this moment. If he gets a huge victory and then, to your point, Kyle, pulls the heel roll and immediately embraces that and just kind of becomes that guy, we could see a whole different trajectory of his career. I mean, he's already on that path towards a title, but he could gain so many fans by playing that role. Or he could come out and do the, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take it that far. I understand I pissed you guys off. He could go so many ways. And
he's got to win this fight, period. That's the end of it. If he doesn't win this fight, all the shit talking, all the shtick, all that stuff doesn't mean nothing. If he wins, he can at least say, you know what, I talked shit and I won. But if he don't win, dude, this is going to be catastrophic. But speaking of talking shit, you've got a guy in Paddy Pimblett who is a guy who, it's no secret, the UFC has wanted to be maybe the next British star in a lot of ways. A lot of people have been on him since his last fight, myself included. I don't know that he won that last fight, man. I still stick by what I said. I don't know that he won that fight. I think they're giving Paddy, like Paddy Pimblett said in this lead up to this fight, it's a lose-lose fight for him. If he wins, he beats a Tony Ferguson who is aging. If he doesn't win, you lost to a Tony Ferguson who's aging. And for Tony Ferguson, I feel like this is the fight that's going to determine, are you still able to fight with, the top in the division, or is it time for you to kind of ride out? Because Tony's had some tough fights, man. He's a warrior. He's a legend. He's all those things. But if he loses this fight to Paddy Pimblett, I feel like that's kind of going to be the nail in the coffin on this one. I want to say Paddy's going to get this fight done as far as who I'm picking. But I'm telling you, man, I really think if Paddy Pimblett doesn't win this fight, it could be the end of the rise of Paddy Pimblett as well. James, for you, what do you think about both of those points? Do you feel like if Paddy loses this fight, I mean, he's really got nowhere to go up from there. And if Tony loses this fight, I feel like this could be the fight that they might send him out of the UFC.
Yeah, you're exactly right. This is the trickiest fight on the card. I really believe that. Because again, Tony Ferguson, kind of like the Josh Emmett thing, losing to some pretty good fighters. Far better competition than Paddy Pimblett's fought. But he's getting finished and he's getting older and he's got injuries. And this is not the Tony Ferguson that we were excited to see fight Khabib all those years ago, right? Like this is the Tony Ferguson that is coming off sort of a BJ Penn type losing streak, right? And I did a video on this. I hate this fight because really what they're doing is they're trying to get Paddy a cheap way to like build him up in the division by giving him a win over Tony Ferguson. Like Robbie Lawler got to fight Nico Price in his retirement fight, right? Like that was a fun veteran fight. This fight is like their way of like saying, oh, well, Paddy beat a former interim champ. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to do that thing. So don't like the matchup, but we'll see. I know Tony's been training with David Goggins. This is only a 3-round fight. I don't know why he needs to work on his endurance. Like there's all this like weird stuff going into the fight. Paddy, I saw a clip of him just before he hopped on here. He looks like he's in good shape. Paddy should win this, but just because he's younger and again, not taking as much damage and just, going to be faster. But this is one I just might stay away from because I think I speak for a lot of people. A lot of us want to see Tony win. We don't want to see him go out the way of BJ Penn of, losing 6 in a row and that's it. And you're going off into the sunset, so to speak. We want to see Tony get it done, but I just don't know. Like, I just don't know how he does it. Like, people bring up the one round he had against Chandler where he looked good for that first round, and then after that he got knocked out. It's like, that's the only glimpse of Tony we've seen over the last 6 fights of him actually, showing that he can win a fight. And I just think Paddy's going to win a decision here. He might finish him, but if you look at Ferguson, when he gets stopped, it's typically late in the fight. He doesn't get finished like in the first or second round, usually typically. So I could see this going a little bit longer. But I think Paddy, unfortunately, will win a decision here.
All right, J-Bone, Corey, what do you got? We're short on time.
Yeah, man, this one, like you said, it kind of hurts the feels a little bit, man. Both of these guys, you want to see the best for Paddy because you like to see these young and up-and-comers and kind of see where the star potential can take them. For Tony, you want to see him get a win. We, like you said, we can't have one of these legends of our time coming out like this, going out on such a losing streak. But then when you match the two up, it's a lose-lose fight.
This is pro wrestling logic. You got to give him the old vet so he can get him a dub over the big name. That's what I feel like.
I fully understand it. And when I first heard it, I was like, this is insane, the matchup. But as it kind of brewed on me, I was like, Tony can get a win in this. This is a winnable fight. We've seen Jared.
Paddy gets hit a lot, and he makes himself hittable.
And he doesn't always put himself in the best positions, and on top of that, make the best decisions. And really, it's what version of Tony are we going to see? To your point with the David Goggins thing, I was hoping we were going to see like him really bite down and maybe a kill cliff or something like that for a new head coach, not a David Goggins, strength and conditioning and athletic training coach as his new basic head coach for the training camp. So I mean, I don't know. He knows how to fight, so let's go, Tony. But yeah, Paddy's probably gonna come out of there victorious.
J-Bone, what do you got?
Hey, I like to fly by the seat of my pants, bro. I'm taking the underdog. Let's go, Tony. And let's stop the hype train. Knock him out.
God damn it, I'm with it. I like it, dude, because I mean, that's been, like you said, James, that's been my one thing with this fight. Everything points me to Paddy should win this fight. But the other thing that it can't get out of my head is Paddy has gotten hit in every fight he's had. Whether he wins, whether it was close like his last fight, or he knocks the guy out or submits him, he's gotten rocked in every fight we've seen in the UFC. And if there's one thing that we know about Tony Ferguson, is Tony Ferguson, if he gets a chance to finish you, will do everything he can to make that happen. So all I'm saying is if Paddy makes himself too hittable in this fight, it's going to be a problem. But I also think with that said, Paddy knows he's got to win this fight. So I feel like we're going to see a lot tighter Paddy in this fight as well, because I know he knows he can't have another performance like he did in his last fight. All right. That brings us to another fight. And I want to ask you this first, James, because I want to know your opinion. Do you think that they're kind of like leading Wonder Boy to the slaughter on this one because Dana's pissed because he turned down that fight with Pereira? Because Shavkat Rakhmonov, for anybody who don't know, fuck around and find out. That guy is an unsung killer and could be in the title picture with a big win after this fight. And I mean, he's had nothing but tough fights in his UFC career as well.
Absolutely. That's all. I mean, look, he's the biggest favorite on the main card. I think he's minus 550 or something like that. This guy would be Khamzat Chimaev if he did more interviews and could speak English and stuff. Like, he is just as dangerous as Shavkat. This guy is destroying fighters, destroying Neil Magny, finishing Jeff Neal, the only guy in the UFC to finish Jeff Neal. You think of all Jeff Neal's losses in the UFC, they were all decisions except for Shavkat, and Jeff Neal missed weight in that fight too, and he still got it done. This guy, to me, I've said this for a long time. He will be fighting for a title here soon. I am very, very high on this guy. The thing is, Wonder Boy, tough to take out. His only stoppage loss in the UFC, Anthony Pettis, that Superman punch. You remember that? Outside of that, he hasn't been finished. So I'm curious to see if this is the fight where Shavkat can go in there and get it done. He's never gone the distance in the UFC, so it certainly leans that way. But also Wonder Boy doesn't seem like he's slowing down. I know when he fought Kevin Holland, and granted Holland hurt himself early in that fight, I know there's a lot of people that thought, oh, Holland's just going to beat him. Well, he did, and he actually looked like good in that fight, Wonder Boy did, with the striking. And Shavkat does get hit a little bit, but I think Shavkat will probably win. I think the big question with this fight is, can he finish? But obviously, I'm going to go with Shavkat here. And to answer your first question, yes, the UFC is punishing him. Despite everything, you could not pick a harder opponent for him in that weight class outside of the champ.
Yeah, I mean, after seeing Wonder Boy's performance against Bilal, who's kind of similar style, I feel like, but Shavkat's a little bit more dangerous, definitely more of a finisher, and this fight really boils down, in my opinion, at least, to is Wonder Boy able to at least stifle the takedown? He doesn't have to completely make it so that it's a 0 takedown, but he needs to make it so it's at least competitive in the wrestling game. If he's able to do that and make it, stay on the feet for moments during this fight, we'll see how it plays out. But I genuinely have a feeling Shavkat, to your point, seeing what Wonder Boy is still able to do to somebody like Kevin Holland, and says, well, I'm just going to go do what I'm best at, take him down, implement my wrestling game, get on top of him, find a finish. Because he's not only full of finishes in the UFC, he's still his whole career, his undefeated professional career, is all finishes. So it's going to be really interesting, to your point, if he's able to find a finish on Wonder Boy. But if he gets him down, man, it's going to be tough.
All right, J-Bone, who you got?
Taking Rakhmonov only by submission, because every time I do this, he wins by submission. I always take him to not get a finish, not your decision or something, and he every time it's something different. So I'm going to take him by submission. I'll play it safe this time. But to James' point, can you get Wonder Boy in that situation? If we can't get him there, we could be seeing a different fight here. It only takes one punch. You never know. But I'm going to play it safe here. Rakhmonov by sub.
All right, we got 2 fights left, and before we get to that, I'll make my pick on this one. I think Rakhmonov's a guy I've been watching for his last few fights and just been like, man, this is a guy that just sticks out to me. He's one of those guys that when you watch him fight, he's just fucking tough. Like, regardless of even if I knew him, the first time I watched him, I left that fight going, who the fuck is this guy? This guy is tough. And to all three of your point, while Wonder Boy, I don't think is at a point like what we were just talking about with Tony Ferguson, I also think that he's in a spot, like you said, James, and that I definitely think that this is a punishment fight because they couldn't have given him anybody tougher. Now, if he wins this fight, I think they're going to have to give him somebody good out of this fight. But with everything we've said and the unbelievable percentage there is to the younger fighter winning in most of these fights, I think all in all, like you said also, Corey, I think that he's going to probably try to take him down and beat him up to get this win. I'm going Shavkat Rakhmonov in this one as well. All right, we're at the 2 title fights. James, here's the question. You know, one thing that we've seen in the flyweight division is we've seen a lot of title flip-flopping lately with what we've seen with Brandon Moreno. Now you have Alexandre Pantoja with the title again, going to fight Brandon Royval. But I'm going to be honest, man, headed into this fight, this seems like one of those where we could see another flip-flop again. I really feel like we could. I feel like Brandon Royval has been on a roll. And again, with the way the fight went with Moreno in the last one with Pantoja, and Moreno having to fight the same guy, 4 times with Figueiredo, 3 times or 4 times? He fought him 3 times or 4 times. And the guy... Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought. So with 4 of them, I mean, dude, you're fighting arguably the other best guy at 125 4 times in a row. You know, it's easy to say that he could have had an off night in that one. Headed into this fight, though, I feel like Royval is on a roll. But what do you think about this one, man? Do you think we could see another transitional one, or do you think Pantoja is going to cement his reign as champ?
I'm going with Pantoja here. I hate to give kind of the boring answer, but I do think it's going to be much closer. I think Brandon Royval had just a bad performance against Pantoja the first fight, and we've seen him get some pretty good wins that have aged quite well. Like the Kai Kara France win was good, knocking out Nicolau in his last fight. You know, we're seeing the striking improvements as well. I think Royval, like his name suggests, as a raw dog, I think he's going to make this a dogfight. I don't think this is going to be an easy fight for Pantoja. I could see these two slugging it out. I'm leaning more towards a late finish here for Pantoja, but this is another fight, and I know I've been using the D word a lot tonight, decision. I could see this maybe going like a Brandon Moreno fight, like his last one. I could really see Brandon Royval giving it his all and getting it done. Factory X has not had a champion in the UFC, and I think this is probably one of their best shots. Anthony Smith was close against John Jones if he would have taken the DQ, right? Like there's been a couple of opportunities, for them to potentially get that belt, but Brandon Royval's got that gym on his shoulders on Saturday, and there's a lot going into this, so we'll see how he looks. I think Royval's got a shot, but I think ultimately Pantoja just showed in that last fight with Moreno he is the best flyweight at 125.
All right, Corey, who's it going to be?
Yeah, Pantoja, man. To your point with the first fight between Pantoja and Royval, I do believe Royval was doing well until he put himself in a bad position. I think he kind of underestimated just how slick Pantoja was with the submissions and stuff like that, and that's how he ultimately ended up getting finished in that first fight. Now, going into the second one, I think we've seen a different version of Royval in the last couple fights. He still has that wild, raw dog, just gameness in there, but he's also learning a little bit more and kind of honing in that skill in and learning more when to use it instead of just being all wild, throughout the fight. And I feel like if we see that version of him and kind of be on his P's and Q's, but bring that explosive stuff when he sees openings for it, we can definitely see a new champion come Saturday. That being said, if he gets caught slipping like he did last time, or if he puts hhimself in a bad position, I feel like Pantoja's he's very good in every aspect of the game, basically. He outstruck Moreno last fight and was able to keep it really, really tight with the ground game. So I don't know, man. I lean towards Pantoja, but my fandom says I want Brandon Royval, so that's the way I'm going to pick. But it's a toss up, man. This one's really a toss up.
My bad. Who you got, Royval or Pantoja, J-Bone?
Hey, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. That's why the pros are here, man. Taking Pantoja by decision, but this is gonna be the fight of the night. Mark my words. This one steals the show. It's gonna be great. Pantoja by decision.
It could definitely be a sleeper. I'm not mad at that at all, dude. Like I said, I got Royval, dude, but I could see, like you guys all said, Pantoja's slick, dude. And I'm not trying to sleep on him at all. I'm just totally throwing that up with the history we've seen with this title. But with that said, you've got to the main event. Colby Covington, Leon Edwards. James, I guess my question for you on this one is, man, this really puts, even though Colby is getting, another title shot here, in most circumstances, I would be like, why is this guy getting another title shot? But for those of you who are new here and haven't hit that subscribe button, which you should do, you should make sure and check out our chat for bodyslam.net with Michael Chandler. When we talked with Michael Chandler, one of the things he said that he believes 100% what Dana said, and that's that he believes that if Kamaru Usman didn't exist in the welterweight division, Colby Covington would have been champion a long time ago. And now that we've kind of seen the fall of Kamaru Usman, if there were ever a chance for Colby Covington to get him a dub, it's against Leon Edwards. So with that said, James, how do you see this fight? And with that said, do you think that if Colby loses this, Colby's going to be out of options if he loses this fight, even though he could still be at the top of the division, but his title hopes after this, I feel like, would be gone.
Absolutely. He's 35. This is it. He's got to win this title. If he doesn't do this, he's running out of options. I've heard some people mention maybe he'll go to 55. I don't see that happening. You think it's going to get any easier with Islam down there? And, he's got to cut all that weight. And then at 85, you got Sean Strickland. Like that's a deep weight class too, if you look at some of the contenders up there. So I really think this is it for Colby. Like he has to win. Now, with all that said, it's going to be interesting because the Kamaru Usman that fought Leon Edwards is not the same Kamaru Usman that fought Colby Covington. I think the Kamaru Usman that fought Leon Edwards is not the same fighter in the sense that I think Colby had a tougher fight. I think Usman, he's gotten a bit older. His knees are not as good as what they used to be. And let's not forget, Usman was winning that rematch until he got head kicked and got knocked out in that fight. Their second fight, I think people forget, was close, right? Like I know Leon won. I don't think there's anyone that thought that Usman got robbed in that fight, but it was very close, right? So, while Edwards has looked great, I think you could also flip it the other way and say that Colby's had close fights with Usman as well. And you could argue that Usman was a better version. The real thing is we don't know how Colby's going to look, right? He's been off for so long, but he's in the gym training. He's getting better. Like maybe there's some new stuff we're going to see from him. I don't really know. Like I think I've seen so many people say, oh, Leon's going to destroy him. And then I've seen the other side being like, oh, Colby's a nightmare matchup. The truth is we don't really know because we haven't seen Colby in such a long time. The Masvidal fight June of 2022, I think was the last time we saw him fight. So you're really kind of kicking a guess on what type of Colby you're going to get here. But the one thing we do know, Colby's a great wrestler. He's good at he's got a great gas tank. That does benefit him. This is a 5-round fight, right? So I think that's where things get interesting. Long story short, I got to take Edwards just because of the activity and the striking. I think that's what it's going to boil down to. I do think Leon is the better striker. I don't think Colby's going to be able to get as many takedowns as maybe he thinks he's going to or whatever. It's going to be razor close, though. I think it's going to, could be like a split decision. But I do see Leon just slightly edging this out. But I will preface this by saying I would not be shocked at all if Colby wins this because there really is that unknown of has he gotten that much better since we saw him last? And I think there's a case to be made for that.
Yeah, that was my biggest argument too leading into this fight is because of the time off. And if you look back at his last couple fights, there's been long periods of break in between each of them. And with the transition of camps going, I believe he's at MMA Masters now. And
he's been there for a minute, I think.
Well, yeah, he's been there for a couple of years now, but yeah.
But that's what I was going to say. A couple of years in his calendar is only 2 fights now. So it's not like we've gotten to see a ton. It's not like we've gotten to see a ton of that evolution that he's done since moving gyms. So that's where I kind of wonder, to your point, James, what version of him do we see? Did he improve on a bunch of stuff that we just now will get to find out now that he potentially can have his own championship run? Or does Leon Edwards, who has basically beat, to your point, a stylistic matchup who's very similar, someone who can strike but is also a very good wrestler in Kamaru Usman against Colby Covington, who can strike and is also a very good wrestler. So really, to me, does Colby Covington's does he bring that pressure that he used to be really notorious for in his fights? Is he just up in Leon's face the whole time? I feel like that could cause big issues for Leon Edwards. He's somebody that seems like that he does a lot better when he's able to plant and kind of lead the fight. If he's going to be on his back foot, I feel like that might cause him some issues. Other than that, to your point, I don't think Colby's just going to be able to take him down very easily. Kamaru Usman wasn't able to. It's fandom. I'm a fan of the whole Colby Covington shtick. I think it's entertaining as hell. So
Get the fuck out of here. The guy we got to pull teeth to watch pro wrestling likes Colby Covington shtick. What the fuck?
Because he goes in there and he backs it up, dude. He goes in there and he backs
does he though?
Yeah, he does, man. If you go look at his fights, I find him entertaining. I mean, there might not be knockouts.
I didn't say they weren't good fights. You said backing it up. That means he's got to win.
And I feel like more often than not, he does. The only losses he has is Kamaru Usman. I mean, so to round out my point, though, I feel like Leon Edwards, the fact that he's now fought somebody so similar and leading into this fight, it's just really does the pressure affect him to that level? Was Colby able to round out significant portions of his game so where he'll have a bigger advantage over Leon that we didn't know about? It's hard to say without having that experience. So money-wise, I would go towards Leon, but same thing like you said, man. Do not be surprised.
All right, J-Bone, who's it going to be?
Look, just like Corey said, man, it all depends on the pressure. What can Colby do pressure-wise to Leon? I don't think he's going to do much, to be honest. I mean, we're momentum guys. 11 out of the last 12 for Leon Edwards. That matters. Colby hasn't fought since March of 2022. I'm taking Leon here. That's the safe bet. That's what's going to be for me. But it might be just a little closer than we think. While Colby may not get him to the ground a lot, I think he's going to try to put a lot of pressure. The striking is going to be there too. But I think Leon's going to win it by a split decision. That's to be exact. I'm taking the prop on that too. Watch me.
You heard it here. J-Bone says split decision. Shit, it looks like I'm the only one that picked Colby, and my heart wants to say Leon Edwards because I thought that was dope as shit when he caught that head kick knockout. So we're going to see what happens. We're going to have to throw some parlays. Make sure you're staying tuned this week. Tomorrow night, we got Miranda Maverick will be coming through. Thanks to the homies over at Millions. If you are new here, make sure you go check out all our merch on there as well. make sure we find out what kind of pickles she's making. We're going to try out some of these pickles that she's talking about on this social media live on the show. So make sure you guys are checking that out. But James, you're always bringing the heat on your channel, bro. So let everybody know where they can find you and what you've got coming up.
I keep it simple, like the name says there, at Lynch on Sports, YouTube, X, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, TikTok. I'm everywhere. So yeah, best way to find all my work, check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. And more importantly, guys, thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun. What a card to get to preview too. I feel like I saved all this time to come on and talk about one of the good cards, right? So there we go.
Hell yeah. I love it, dude. We appreciate the time, man. It's always good times to shoot the shit with you. Well, you know, I know you're not the biggest wrestling guy, but I'll let you out of here with this. What are your thoughts on the return of CM Punk?
I do know that. No, I do know that. I know about that. You know, I'll tell you a story. I met CM Punk at UFC 218. I forget which Rufus Sport fighter was there. He was cornering. I can't remember who it was, or he was just in attendance. But I actually got to talk to him, and I was trying to interview him, and then UFC stepped in there like he's not doing any interviews. I was like, But yeah, Phil Brooks, good dude. Blackhawks fan. He's obviously a hockey guy, so got to respect that.
Patrick Kane coming to the Wings.
That's right. Yeah, I saw that. Let's see how he looks after hip surgery. But I'm really.
Quiet. We weren't going to talk about that.
I know, exactly. It was cool to see. Honestly, though, it was cool to see Punk get that reception. Like, I've been following, I'm a casual wrestling fan, so I do know what's going on a little bit. But I thought that was really cool, him coming back, because no one really expected that. From everyone that I follow and, that's in the wrestling world, it seemed like he was kind of going to be exiled. And then here he is with WWE. So good for him.
Hell yeah, man. I can't argue that. We got to be there. Shout out to WWE for bringing us out to Survivor Series and getting to be there in the press conference. I can tell you this much. I don't think anybody knew about that, because the people in the press room felt bad that they pulled us out of the arena right before CM Punk came out after the War Games match was over. So I'm going to just throw this out here, and I'm going to throw it out and say, I think that not very many people knew about that. But now you know what James has got going on. You know what we've got going on. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like I said, be back here tomorrow night, 9 p.m. We're going to be live with Miranda, Fear the Maverick. We'll talk about No-Gi Worlds and more. Until next time, in the in-between time, peace.